Good morning from Mission Control in Houston and the International Space Station Flight Control Room. The flight controllers here in Houston all set to support the homecoming of 3 crew members from the International Space Station. At this hour, we're just 23 minutes, 28 seconds away from the deorbit burn on the Soyuz MS-24 spacecraft that will bring back to Earth Loral O'Hara, the NASA astronaut who is wrapping up 204 days in space, Soyuz Commander Oleg Novitskiy of Roscosmos, and Belarus spaceflight participant Marina Vasilevskaya. Novitskiy and Vasilevskaya wrapping up a 2-week mission in which they delivered Tracy Dyson of NASA to the International Space Station on the Soyuz MS-25. Here in the Flight Control Room, Flight Director Fiona Antkowiak, along with Flight Director Elias Mirmo on console. To their right is Spacecraft Communicator Aki Hoshide, who, when required, will be talking to the space station crew in the homestretch of their workday before they begin an off-duty weekend prior to the start of a bevy of operational activity aboard the International Space Station. Outside of Moscow in the town of Korolyov, the Russian mission control team is poised to supervise the deorbit burn, entry, and landing of the Soyuz MS-24 as they pore over the data on their consoles, relaying information to Novitskiy, O'Hara, and Vasilevskaya aboard the Soyuz spacecraft. The 3 crew members returning home today, again strapped into their respective seats in the center section of the Soyuz in the descent module. Novitskiy is the Soyuz commander in the center seat. To his right is NASA astronaut Loral O'Hara, Marina Vasilevskaya, the spaceflight participant from Belarus, to Novitskiy's left. O'Hara, as mentioned, is wrapping up 204 days in space and aboard the International Space Station, a mission that has spanned 3,264 orbits of the Earth and 86.5 million miles. Novitskiy and Vasilevskaya spent 14 days in space, 12 aboard the station, 224 orbits of the Earth, in a mission in which they traveled 5.9 million statute miles. Some 5.5 hours ago, the 3 departing crew members, Novitskiy, O'Hara, and Vasilevskaya, bid farewell to their expedition crewmates on the station in the Rassvet module and then floated through the hatchway to the Soyuz MS-24. That was followed by the closing of the Rassvet hatch by Station Commander Oleg Kononenko of Roscosmos, and then moments later the Soyuz hatch closed on that side of the docking interface as the 3 departing crew members began preparations for leak checks at the docking interface and then to suit up in their Sokol launch and entry suits that they are clad in the descent module as we speak. We're just 20 minutes away from the deorbit burn that will begin the journey home for O'Hara, Novitskiy, and Vasilevskaya. At 10:54 p.m. Central Time, 11:54 p.m. Eastern Time, the hooks opened between the Soyuz and the Rassvet module, springs on both sides of the docking interface pushed off against one another, allowing the physical separation of the Soyuz MS-24 as it traveled 260 miles above Mongolia. There were 2 separation burns to enable the Soyuz to begin an opening rate away from the International Space Station, and at the moment they are at a distance of about 39 kilometers away from the station, poised to begin the deorbit burn to begin the journey back to Earth and a parachute-assisted landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan. Less than 20 minutes from now, the Soyuz engines will ignite on the MS-24. It'll be a 4-minute, 41-second retrograde deorbit burn to slow the Soyuz down by 128 meters per second, allowing it to drop out of orbit. 28 minutes after the burn, there will be an automatic pyrotechnic separation of the 3 sections of the Soyuz vehicle as the descent module begins its entry back into the Earth's atmosphere, plasma heating around the vehicle rising to about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. As the Soyuz approaches the landing site, there will be an automatic sequence triggered to deploy a series of chutes, first an extraction chute, then drogue chutes, and then the main parachute that will deploy about 15 minutes before touchdown, enabling the Soyuz to gently land on the steppe of Kazakhstan. The landing site is about 91 miles to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan, where the NASA, Roscosmos, and Rosaviatsa search and recovery teams are currently gathered, ready to board a half a dozen Russian Mi-8 helicopters for the 30 to 35-minute flight to the landing zone, where they will begin a circular pattern around the landing zone itself, waiting for the arrival of the Soyuz under its parachute. Once the Soyuz touches down, those recovery forces will begin to make their way toward the spacecraft, and the process of extracting the crew one by one, placing them in medical chairs, in comfortable chairs outside of the capsule, so that they can have a few minutes to regain their land legs and their equilibrium before they're carried into a nearby inflatable medical tent for preliminary medical exams and to get out of those Sokol launch and entry suits into more comfortable clothing. The three crew members will then board three individual helicopters for a 2-hour flight back to the staging city of Karaganda, Kazakhstan, where they will split up, O'Hara boarding a NASA jet for the return flight to Houston, Novitskiy and Vasilevskaya boarding a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft for their flight back to their training base in Star City, Russia, outside of Moscow. As we approach the 15-minute mark before the start of the deorbit burn, again, Novitskiy is the Soyuz commander under the call sign of Kazbeki that he has called his spacecraft. He will be told by the Russian flight control team in Korolyov to transmit the pressure readings and the duration of the burn and the progress of the burn as it is executed, again, a 4-minute, 41-second deorbit burn to slow the Soyuz down by 128 meters per second. 28 minutes after the deorbit burn will be the pyrotechnic separation of the three sections of the Soyuz, the orbital module, the bulbous top portion of the Soyuz spacecraft, which will be depressurized about 10 seconds after the completion of the deorbit burn. The crew is strapped into their seats in the descent module, that center section that you see. The bottom portion, the instrumentation and propulsion module, also will be discarded at the time of the automatic pyrotechnic separation of the modules that is scheduled at 1:51 a.m. Central Time. About 3 minutes after the modules separate, the descent module will reach the upper levels of the Earth's atmosphere, called entry interface, at an altitude of about 61.8 miles. At that time, the crew members will start to feel the pull of gravity against their bodies. For Loral O'Hara, the first time she will experience gravity in 204 days. Some 90 seconds later, the spacecraft will begin its entry into what is called the plasma regime, where the temperatures around the Soyuz descent module will build to about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit, the heat shield pointed in the direction of travel to repel or ablate the heat away from the spacecraft. They will exit that plasma regime just after 2 a.m. Central Time, and a minute later, The crew will experience their maximum G loads on their bodies, about 4 to 5 Gs, if everything is going according to plan. The command to open the parachutes at an altitude of 6.7 miles above the Earth is scheduled to be issued at 2:03 a.m. Central Time, 3:03 a.m. Eastern Time, some 14 and a half minutes before touchdown, which is scheduled at 2:17 and 36 seconds a.m. Central Time, 3:17 and 36 seconds a.m. Eastern Time, which will be 12:17 p.m. Kazakhstan time at the landing site, some 6 hours and 43 minutes before sunset. The latest coordinates for the landing, as relayed to the crew a few minutes ago by the Russian mission controllers in Korolyov, calls for the landing to occur at a latitude of 47.24 degrees north and a longitude of 69.39 degrees east. One other note that is worth mentioning, shortly before the separation of the modules, that again is scheduled at 1:51 a.m. Central Time, this is the area where the Soyuz will be too far away from the International Space Station to assure guaranteed voice communications. That'll be at a range of about 170 kilometers between the Soyuz and the International Space Station. So at this point, communications could be choppy and they could be lost altogether for a period of time. That is normal until the Soyuz approaches the area of the landing site, at which time communications will be restored through the Antonov flying fixed-wing aircraft, which serves as a flying relay and data command center, if you will, to relay voice and data back to the Russian mission controllers in Korolyov. About 11 minutes away from the start of the deorbit burn. At this point, the landing team members who will be aboard the 6 Russian Mi-8 helicopters departing from Zhezkazgan for the landing site, they're in their respective helicopters, rotors running, ready to take off in sequential fashion for about a 35-minute flight to the landing zone, awaiting the arrival of the Soyuz MS-24. At the landing site southeast of Zhezkazgan, it's a beautiful Saturday afternoon with just a few clouds at 10,000 feet, winds out of the southwest at about 6 knots, and the temperature expected to be around 60 degrees Fahrenheit for a balmy spring return to Earth for Loral O'Hara, Oleg Novitskiy, and Marina Vasilevskaya.
Казбек, тупо Москвы.
Казбек, Moscow. Go ahead at 9:14. I send the EKV inhibit. Waiting for the maneuver. Copy.
Далее по циклограмме отработки импульса.
And then proceed with the timeline for the burn. Copy.
Approaching 8 minutes before the start of the deorbit burn. All the Soyuz systems are in excellent shape. Aboard the International Space Station itself, the Expedition 71 crew, transitioning from 70 to 71 at the time of the undocking a few hours ago, led by Commander Oleg Kononenko. That Expedition 71 crew is wrapping up its workday. They'll be monitoring the next hour or so until the landing of the Soyuz MS-24 spacecraft and its 3 occupants, and have an off-duty weekend planned. A lot of activity lies ahead for the space station and its crew on board, with the schedule calling for a Russian spacewalk by Kononenko and Roscosmos cosmonaut Nikolai Chub. On April 25th, the undocking of the SpaceX Dragon cargo craft on April 26th for its return home, filled with science experiments and equipment. That will set the stage for a relocation of the Crew 8 Crew Dragon spacecraft from the forward port of the Harmony module to the zenith port on Harmony, which is currently occupied by the SpaceX cargo craft. The opening up of the forward port of Harmony through that relocation, which is scheduled for no earlier than April 30th, will then be the precursor to the launch and docking of the Boeing Starliner spacecraft on the crew flight test that is scheduled for launch with Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams aboard on the evening of May 6th from Launch Pad 41 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Just under 6 minutes now until the start of the deorbit burn. Once again, this will be a 4-minute, 41-second retrograde firing, slowing the Soyuz down by 128 meters per second, enabling it to begin its slow descent towards the Earth's atmosphere. The beginning of the deorbit burn will occur at an altitude of 440.3 kilometers above the Earth for the Soyuz. When the burn is complete, 4 minutes and 41 seconds later, the Soyuz will begin its descent from an altitude of 430 kilometers. And again, the upper section of the Soyuz, called the orbital module, will be depressurized 10 seconds after the completion of the burn as planned, setting the stage for the module separation that occurs automatically through pyrotechnic devices. That will occur at 1:51 a.m. Central Time, 2:51 a.m. Eastern Time. Coming up on 4 minutes until the deorbit burn. 2 minutes 45 seconds till the deorbit burn. The International Space Station and Soyuz flying 260 miles above the southwestern Atlantic Ocean, having just crossed the southern tip of South America, now beginning a southwest to northeasterly trek in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. Once again, you'll be hearing Oleg Novitskiy calling out parameters of the burn for the duration of its 4-minute 41-second duration. He'll be communicating frequently with the flight controllers that you see there at the Russian Mission Control Center in the International Space Station Flight Control Room in Korolyov. 90 seconds away from the start of the deorbit burn.
BIOS power is on. Compass. SKD cover is open. Copy.
The Soyuz engine cover is open. 30 seconds till the start of the burn.
Линейку И подготовь.
Select line E. Selected line E.
Принято.
Copy.
Ten seconds till the start of the burn. Standing by for ignition.
Firing confirmed. Firing confirmed.
The deorbit burn underway as planned. This will be 4 minutes and 41 seconds in duration.
секунд.
30 seconds. Burn is 13.2.
Novitskiy,
Copy.
as the Soyuz commander, reading off parameters of the burn, 45 seconds into the burn.
Минута 20.
1 minute, 26 and 2.
45.
45. Duration.
Минута 15.
1 minute, 15 seconds, 33.3.
Минута
1 minute, 30 seconds, 39.7.
1 minute, 40 seconds into the burn. About 3 minutes to go.
Минута 45.
1 minute and 45. 46.5.
Две минуты.
2 minutes.
Just over 2 minutes into the burn, everything proceeding normally.
Copy.
2:15.
2:15, 60.5.
The Soyuz continues to decelerate.
2:30.
2 minutes to go in the burn.
Два 45.
2:45, 74.1.
Three minutes into the burn, everything proceeding on track. The first of the search and recovery helicopters for NASA, Roscosmos personnel, and Rosaviatsa search and recovery forces should be taking off right now from the Zhezkazgan airport for the landing site.
3:15.
3:15, 87.
Принято.
Copy.
3.5 minutes into the burn, about 1 minute 10 seconds left.
3:30.
3 minutes, 30 seconds, 95.2.
Язык 047. До форсунка форма.
Nozzles nominal.
3:45.
3:45, 102.8.
Four minutes, 5 seconds into the burn,
109.1.
about 31 seconds left. Four and a half minutes into the burn, standing by for engine cutoff.
4 minutes, 30 seconds, 123.6.
And the deorbit burn is complete and reported to be nominal by the flight controllers in Korolyov. Loral O'Hara, Oleg Novitskiy, and Marina Vasilevskaya heading back to Earth.
127.9. Copy.
Есть давление падения в бытовом
Barrel pressure is declining.
Сбор, двери по ГЦ.
Copy.
Принято. Все три гудка. Так, ну, дальше контролируйте падение давления.
Continue monitoring pressure decay and
По
barrel.
времени по 62-й странице.
And work per page 62.
The orbital module, the uppermost section of the three-section Soyuz vehicle, currently being depressurized as planned in advance of the separation of the three sections of the Soyuz that is coming up at 1:51 a.m. Central Time, 2:51 a.m. Eastern.
И позднее 9:45 КСС в режим готовности.
Oleg, no later than 9:45, sure says in ready mode.
До разделения 21 минута.
So with the deorbit burn having been completed as planned, next up in about 21 minutes will be the separation of the three modules comprising the Soyuz spacecraft. Pyrotechnic devices will trigger the automatic separation of those three modules, the upper module being the orbital module, and the lower section being the instrumentation and propulsion module, leaving just the descent module, the center section, with the crew strapped in their seats, heading in the direction of travel toward the landing site.
The comm is intermittent. I did not understand anything you said.
At the intermediary staging site at Kazakhstan, which is 91 miles to the northeast, or the northwest, I should say, of the landing site, the Russian Mi-8 helicopters, 6 of them, are en route now to the landing zone, where they will form a circular flying pattern around the landing site, along with an Antonov 26 fixed-wing aircraft that will serve as a flying relay station for data and voice communication from the Soyuz crew as they approach the area of touchdown.
Kazbeki, this is Moscow. How do you copy?
Kazbeki is the call sign Novitskiy chose for his Soyuz spacecraft for both launch to docking as well as undocking through landing. He knows and has trained to maintain as constant communication as possible with the flight controllers in Korolyov during the Soyuz descent back into the Earth's atmosphere. We're about 43 minutes away from touchdown, which, if it occurs on time, will be at 2:17 and 36 seconds a.m. Central Time, 3:17 and 36 seconds a.m. Eastern Time, 12:17 p.m. on Saturday at the landing site in Kazakhstan, 91 miles to the southeast of the town of Kazakhstan.
Yes, the sensor.
The weather at the landing site is very good. Just a few clouds reported at 10,000 feet. Winds very light out of the southwest at about 6 knots. Temperatures around 60 degrees Fahrenheit to greet O'Hara, Novitskiy, and Vasilevskaya.
Что говорит? Спасибо. Получилось, Лорал?
Нет.
Were you able to do it?
Нормально, вот два.
No.
The Russian ballistics experts have forecast the touchdown to occur at a latitude of 47.24 degrees north with a longitude of 69.39 degrees east for the Soyuz spacecraft and its 3 occupants. Everything quiet on board the Soyuz, as it is at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov. All the Soyuz systems in good shape. The undocking earlier was perfectly normal. The separation burns to begin the departure opening rate for the Soyuz away from the International Space Station were executed on time, as was the deorbit burn just a few minutes ago to decelerate the Soyuz, enabling it to begin its descent out of low Earth orbit back toward the Earth's atmosphere. Aside from the Rosaviatsa helicopter support teams, the 6 Mi-8 helicopters, which are airborne en route to the landing site, the Russian flight controllers report that all the ground support teams already in place in all-terrain vehicles are poised for the return of the Soyuz. With the weather expected to be good for landing with good visibility, our hope is that we begin to pick up video of the Soyuz descending under its large orange and white parachute. Those chutes will be deployed about 15 minutes before touchdown. We're about 12 minutes away from the module separation, the pyrotechnic separation of the 3 sections of the Soyuz. That will occur at an altitude of 87 miles above the Earth. The module separation will occur about 3 minutes before the Soyuz begins to enter the Earth's atmosphere. This is Mission Control Houston. Just to recap, everything proceeding on schedule as planned with the return of the Soyuz MS-24 back to Earth. Soyuz Commander Oleg Novitskiy, NASA astronaut Loral O'Hara, and Belarus spaceflight participant Marina Vasilevskaya, soon to feel the tug of Earth's gravity against their bodies. For O'Hara, this will be the first sensation of gravity in 204 days. Novitskiy and Vasilevskaya comprising basically a taxi crew to ferry a new Soyuz vehicle up to the station, the Soyuz MS-25, which remains at the station and is the ticket home for NASA's Tracy Dyson, along with Oleg Kononenko and Nikolai Chub, come September. The Russian ballistics officers have refined the landing coordinates post-deorbit burn, a very slight tweak. The expected landing target for the Soyuz MS-24 is at a latitude of 47.21 degrees north and a longitude of 69.38 degrees east. The Rosaviatsa Search and Recovery Forces en route to the landing zone. The Russian Mi-8 helicopters are airborne. They'll arrive in the vicinity of the landing site a short time from now and will maintain a circular flying pattern around that landing zone, awaiting the arrival of the Soyuz under its chute. Those helicopters are accompanied by an Antonov 26 fixed-wing aircraft that serves as a flying relay center for communications and data from the Soyuz to the Russian flight control team in Korolyov outside of Moscow. Eight minutes away from the scheduled module separation for the Soyuz vehicle, in the descent module in the center seat is the Soyuz commander Oleg Novitskiy of Roscosmos. NASA's Loral O'Hara strapped into her seat. To the right of Novitskiy, Marina Vasilevskaya, the Belarus spaceflight participant, is seated to Novitskiy's left. As a reminder, following the deorbit burn, as is commonplace, the Soyuz is too far away from the International Space Station for reliable VHF communications, and so those communications either are lost or are choppy at best until the Soyuz approaches the vicinity of the landing site, when those communications are restored solidly with the Antonov 26 relay plane. Again, this is normal and is to be expected, as we are now about 6 minutes away from the planned separation of the three sections of the Soyuz. Here in Mission Control in Houston, countdown clocks ticking backward toward the expected touchdown time for the Soyuz, just about 31 minutes from now. Loral O'Hara is wrapping up 204 days in space, in which she accrued 3,264 orbits of the Earth, having traveled 86.5 million statute miles. O'Hara, during her tenure on the International Space Station of 6.5 months, saw the arrival of 8 visiting vehicles and the departure of 7 visiting vehicles, and she conducted 1 spacewalk totaling 6 hours and 42 minutes in duration, along with NASA astronaut Jasmine McBelly. The Soyuz, that is less than 30 minutes away from its return to Earth with O'Hara, Novitskiy, and Vasilevskaya, launched last September 15th from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, with O'Hara, Oleg Kononenko, and Nikolai Chub on board. Kononenko and Chub will and are remaining on board the International Space Station as members of the Expedition 71 crew, Kononenko being the commander of the International Space Station. He soon will pass the 1,000-day mark in space for total time by any human being, more than any other human who has ever flown in space. That 1,000-day milestone to be reached on June 4th. Kononenko and Chub will return to Earth in September with NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson, who launched on March 23rd with Novitskiy and Vasilevskaya. We're about 3 minutes away from the planned time for the module separation. This will occur at an altitude of 87 miles above the Earth.
Есть запуск программы разделения, есть L5 управляемый спуск, есть АУС на формате спуск.
Elga is confirmed. Spoosk is confirmed on the display. Copy.
The Russian ballistics officers report that the commands have been issued for module separation. We're about 1 minute away from the planned pyrotechnic separation of the 3 sections of the Soyuz vehicle. We now have confirmation of the Soyuz module separation. It occurred on time as planned. So the descent module with O'Hara, Novitskiy, and Vasilevskaya strapped in their seats, now flying on its own, targeting the landing site to the southeast of the town of Jezkazgan, Kazakhstan, touchdown 25 minutes away. We're about 2 minutes away from the descent module entering the Earth's atmosphere. That will occur at an altitude of 61.8 miles. At that point, the 3 crew members will begin to feel the effects of Earth's gravity against their bodies.
Incoherent.
So far, everything proceeding as planned for the return of Loral O'Hara, Oleg Novitskiy, and Marina Vasilevskaya, some 23.5 minutes away from touchdown on the steppe of Kazakhstan. The weather is very nice for this time of the year at the landing site. Just a few clouds at 10,000 feet, winds light out of the southwest at about 6 knots. The temperature about 60 degrees Fahrenheit. The Soyuz should now be entering the Earth's atmosphere, the point called entry interface. In about a minute or so, the Soyuz should begin the period of peak heating in the plasma regime, as well as beginning entry guidance through its onboard computers targeting the landing site southeast of Jezkazgan, where the Rosaviatsa search and recovery forces, as well as NASA and Roscosmos personnel, are about to arrive in a circular flying pattern, awaiting the Soyuz descending under its large parachute. As the Soyuz enters this plasma regime, think of it as a blackout period where the heat around the vehicle builds to about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. This will last for about 4 minutes or so. This is Mission Control Houston. Just 20 minutes now until the expected landing of the Soyuz MS-24 with Loral O'Hara, Oleg Novitskiy, and Marina Vasilevskaya on board. The lack of communications from the crew on board the Soyuz is to be expected at this point until the Soyuz emerges from this plasma regime. Communications will be restored through the Antonov 26 fixed-wing aircraft at the landing site, relaying voice and data to the Russian mission controllers that you see there in the Russian mission control room for the International Space Station outside of Moscow. The Russian Mi-8 helicopters have arrived in the vicinity of the landing zone. Just about 18 minutes now until touchdown. We're about 4 minutes away from the anticipated command to begin the opening of the parachutes. That parachute deployment sequence is triggered by a barometric pressure sensor at an altitude of 41,000 feet. The main parachute cover is jettisoned by a series of pyros and springs that pulls out 2 extraction chutes, which in turn pulls out the drogue chute, which in turn pulls out the main chute. That all takes about 20 seconds to happen. Then, at an altitude of 21,000 feet, another pressure sensor starts a timer, triggering most of the remaining events in the landing sequence. Commands will be issued to jettison the heat shield, inhibit the entry thrusters, and to open valves to vent all the hydrogen peroxide fuel for the entry thrusters and the oxygen in the life support system tank. This from the ground is seen as a white vapor, which is normal. That's a combination of hydrogen peroxide and oxygen venting into the air. The purpose of this is to safe the vehicle for landing. The search and recovery forces and the RSC Energia personnel do not want hazardous gases to remain in the tanks when the soft landing thrusters fire just a couple of seconds before touchdown. This way, the ground support personnel can approach the vehicle without personal protection equipment.